Welcome back, everybody, to the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. I am your host, Greg Scully, with my co-host from across town, Darren Light. Today, we are joined by Bruce Woulett. He is part of our series of the Road to 500 Units. That tends to be a number that people put a lot of emphasis on. By that time, either you've bought one large property or many along the way. In any case, you probably have enough experience to learn some lessons and share experiences, both good and bad, for those trying to achieve the same goal. So we appreciate your time, Bruce. Would you mind just starting off with an intro? Tell us about yourself, where you're from, what you're into, and then we'll get into it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here and to share our story with you. And so I tell people I'm in the togetherment business. People call them apartments. I call them togetherments because we create unity out of chaos. Our focus is currently C and B properties in Arizona exclusively. That's not where I started. I started in Phoenix, but we were doing single family fix and flips and wholesaling in Phoenix from 2003 to 2000, would have been 12, and did over 2,000 transactions. And it was really an exciting journey for us to get into real estate, but that market changed. So we shifted into apartments. And I've always found that I have a real deep passion for the residents. Our focus is the permanent resident, one who may never own a home and like to live in one. And there's 5 pillars that we share. And I think it's very enlightening to who we are. So our focus is serving the underserved. Our passion is our focus is a permanent resident, one who may never own a home and like to live in one. Our passion is serving the underserved, and our mission is creating communities out of apartments, and which are safe, functional, durable, and clean. And our desire is to attract like-minded individuals, take this journey with us with a promise to leave all things better than we found them. So with those in mind, you look at how you buy apartments, and most people buy apartments or togetherments, as we say, with the dollar in mind. And I think the dollar is important. Obviously, profit is good. More profit is more good. But there's a lack of focus on taking care of the resident, and they treat them with second class. And I think that's really a travesty to the industry. So our focus is really to take care of the resident, make it a home, take care of one of their human basic needs, which is shelter. And so with that, I believe we build a stronger community, which is a stronger base. And previously, we were in the buy, fix, and sell, in and out within 18 to 24 months on the apartments. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had nearly 500 units. We're down to 90. We've been divesting them and refocusing on legacy ownership. So from now on, anything we buy, we want to hold indefinitely, 10-year plus. And so that's our new focus, because then we feel we can have a better impact on the community, and also to reap the rewards of the creation of the safe community that we've had. We sell them at a peak performance. Well, why not keep them at peak performance and maintain that? So that's our new focus.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because the permanent renter, in my mind, that person already exists. There are permanent renters out there already. And by you focusing on the resident or customer experience, you're just going to have them stay in your building instead of move to somebody else's building because somebody's not treating them fairly, or somebody's not keeping the place clean, or making it a welcoming community, or any number of things. So there's a segment of the demographic out there that will rent for life. I really appreciate your focus on the customer experience, which is something that another mentor of mine brought up. Is like, you can focus on a dollar you want, but people are what pay rent. So focus on the person, and everything else kind of falls into place. Is that, broadly speaking, a little bit of your your mindset on that?
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was in an Apple store a few years ago. It would have been 2000, I suppose, 9 or 10. And we had purchased laptops for the crew, and we spent about $8,000 in one bill. So it was probably 3 laptops at that time, right? But we bought some laptops, spent $8,000 and some peripheral items, and we're getting set up. And within a couple of days, I got an email from somebody that said, "Bruce, I'd like to talk to you. regarding your experience. I'm a business rep here at Apple. So I called them and they said, hey, this is what we have. And they shared all these things that they provide for free at the Genius Bar training. Make sure you maximize the use of your Mac. Here's some software you should use. It's already on your system. And so I went to these things to learn how to use some of the new software that was out at that time. And I thought, man, they're a how many billion-dollar company, and they care about one little customer that came in and bought 3 laptops and some other things and spent some money there. And I thought, that experience to me was that, okay, this was very much customer based. So then I sat down and thought, okay, if we have a resident that lives with us for 5 years and they spend really low rent of $700 a month, they're a $42,000 customer. And I said, man, taking $42,000 from a low income person over the course of 5 years is a lot of money. And to them, it's even more money than it is to the operator typically. So you think, why are they treated so poor? Why are they not treated as the customer? They're treated as a commodity, and it just didn't seem fair. And that really resonated. So when I went to these conferences across the country, I met other owners with a similar mindset, but most of them that were that way were actually, every one of them were legacy owners. Not one of them was a fix and flip. The fix and flip just got the people in, maximized the occupancy, maximized the return, and sold it to somebody else, which there's nothing wrong with that model. It's just not my model.
Yeah, that's just awesome. I really it was referred to you from somebody else. We had never met before this phone call, so I was doing what everybody does, checking out what they're up to on LinkedIn and stuff. And I came across your your profile, and you talk about the permanent renter, the togetherment business. Well, I want to talk about that next, because once you pointed that out, that apartments has a part right in the name, and that you've completely flipped that on its head and are calling it the togetherment business, is just another emphasis on your focus on the customer experience. And that's what Apple does so well, is they create raving fans, and they want to bring people into that fold to share that awesome experience. I haven't experienced the Apple effect as a consumer. Maybe I need to delve into that to see what I'm missing. But why can't that apply to any kind of venture? So yeah,
I want to ask Greg. Let me ask one question real quick.
Yeah.
I want to know, were you guys already acquiring at that time apartments? You were in apartments at that time when you had that experience with Apple?
No, I was, we were doing houses at that time, but what we shifted from selling, houses that we were buying at that time were, we're purchasing them up at auction, REOs, direct to owners, and we were spending $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 per house in West Phoenix. And they're pretty rugged, but they were, our focus was 3-bedroom, 2-bath, block on slab properties.
Yeah.
And when we would sell them, we found out that the owners, the people that should be buying them, are homeowners, and they're buying them for 45, 50,000. We couldn't get a loan. The loan had to be a minimum 50,000. And so then they had to have so much money down. And so many of our properties were under 50 that we did seller carrybacks to the property owners. And then we sold those notes to investors at no benefit to us. We sold them at cost, full value. So if it was a $35,000 mortgage, we sold it for $35,000. We didn't make any profit on that. Our profit was in the deal itself. And what we found out a couple of years later, I went back over the list of properties and I randomly selected them, and over 80% of the people that bought those properties still own them years later. So I did that again 2 or 3 years ago, and still most of them still own their houses. They bought them for 35, 40 grand. Now they're worth 180. And so that got me excited when we were looking at that, when we got into apartments. Now our first apartment deal would have been November, the buy, fix, and reposition was November of 2014.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked it is I wanted to know if there was a third-party management experience that led you to not only decide to go this route, but this aha moment with Apple combined. So that tells me right away it was just that one story with Apple that made you think, hey, when we get to this point in management, this is how we're going to treat. Well, you're already doing it with a single family, which is a great story in itself. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. Yep.
Sorry, Greg.
No, that's fine. Because that was something that came to my mind. You you got up close to the 500 unit, and now you're reverting back because you're changing business models. It sounds like you're going through this legacy hold type thing. Are you doing management in house now as well? Because I would say it would be difficult to have such a customer focused um, mindset using institutional grade, maybe third party management. And the only reason I say that is that they might not have the exact same mindset as you do. So are you going to manage in house, or are you still trying to accomplish this with third party management?
We have third party management, and the company that we work with in Tucson is a Phoenix based company, and we know them personally. But we went through a half a dozen management companies to get to this one, and one of those was we set up our own Together Management company. And the challenge we had was our focus is so intensely on purchase and acquiring that we didn't have the right focus on building a staff for property management. So we spent the efforts finding a property management company who shares the same values, and we work with them now, and they do a terrific job on that. And we do remind them. We go down and periodically do random tours and check out units and say, hey, this customer experience is off. We got to fix this, or this is a challenge. We got to fix that. And they're very, very receptive. The regional manager, she gets it. We talked to a couple of different regional managers there before we end up with the one we have, and she gets us to the core. And her goal every day is to satisfy us when she's working on our properties. So I think that's pretty awesome, because I don't believe it's above and beyond to do that. I think it's just common sense, to take care of them that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to hear that you're able to do that with third party management, because I thought that might be a barrier. And I guess, yeah, you're just doing the legwork to find somebody that shares the same values with you. I imagine, you may have had to do uh, some education with them, or some, heart to hearts on how exactly you wanted the things to be run, and they have to be on board with that. But
Well, we'll get into a little bit later, but the property we're doing in Sierra Vista, the property management company that's there that we interviewed, they're the primary property management company in Sierra Vista. Well, we found out yesterday that one of the investors that's interested, or that is investing with us, went and toured Sierra Vista and went to the property management company's sister properties that they're managing, competitors of ours, and talked to the residents, talked to the manager. And I said, wow, they went above and beyond. And they said that it was an amazing experience. And so that really spoke volumes for that company as well. So it's a different company just because of their presence in Sierra Vista. It's pretty prominent, but they do share the same values. And it was really exciting to find that. And that was just by luck. It just happened to be,
yeah.
they're the ones that are
Well,
there.
also,
So.
you sounds like you've got investors that share the same values, that everybody's on board with the same vision. Um, that's a
Yeah.
little, you don't hear that a lot. A potential investor, I don't know how active they are, but to go secret shopping their potential property manager is, it's nice to have somebody like that on your team.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
didn't, and it's actually, we don't know him. It's through one of our partners, so I don't even know the investor personally, but they just said she went down there and checked it out. So I think she was referring some of her friends and thought, I'm not going to refer anything I haven't put my fingers on and touched and looked at. So I'm not sure what motivated it, but we found it out yesterday. I said, oh, that was pretty powerful. And we did not ask for that. We did not, but they do get it, and they did share back that is what we found, and it was exactly the things that we try to work on ourselves. So that was pretty exciting to get that that alignment.
Is your focus on a unit count for a particular project to be able to support a full-time property manager, say something like that 80 to 100 unit focus? Do you bring the strategy down to that level so that you may be able to get that key hire that is focused on a single property? Because I think when you're able to do that, you have somebody dedicated to a single property, the likelihood of having them to have a more vested relationship with it and its residents is stronger. Is that part of your strategy, is to keep enough scale that you can um, continue to have that customer experience through key hires?
Yes, our anything less than 60 units has been a challenge. People say 75 is the cutoff, or 80. We find 60 is for 2 full-time people there, full-time maintenance and full-time leasing agent. Works pretty well at 60 plus. It's a little bit tight at 60, but it just works. It works. That's about as the bottom you want to go. The best is probably right around 100 to 150. You might need a second maintenance person, but one on-site property manager should be sufficient. So you'd have 2.5 to 3 people working there, right? So if you have multiple properties, the beauty is you could share resources like maintenance people back and forth, and that's our goal ultimately when we're looking at properties now back in Phoenix again. We're looking at some new opportunities up here because Sierra Vista is 3.5 hour drive, and there's not a good flight plan. I don't have my helicopter yet, so it's quite the drive. But yeah, that's absolutely the size is 60 minimum. I like 70 to 75 up to 120, and then from there you could scale. So we've looked at things that are 300 unit plus with some international partners that we may become partners on, but that's a whole nother business model with the same focus on the resident.
Yeah, can you talk about some of the things that you've implemented or want to implement that will be the differentiator between you and a competitor to attract that permanent renter, or to get that super long stay? I mean, what are some of the things that you're presenting to the residents from the customer experience point of view that is overlooked by the majority of other providers?
I think the number one thing is the quick response to any maintenance ticket items. You want to respond really quickly on those and get an answer to them within a day. If they have something that they need help with, you respond quickly. The second thing that we do is when we update the units, update them with like the flooring, upgrade to vinyl planking as opposed to vinyl linoleum, or get rid of carpeting. Carpeting is inexpensive and it's quiet. It's nice for that, but when they really get dirty, that when you tearing out the carpet, it's pretty disgusting actually. Even in people that take care of even people that are clean, it's pretty disgusting what sifts through the carpet into the subfloor below. But so we're really big fan of that. Solid surface countertops, we're getting away from Formica and into solid surface, even some granite if it's inexpensive enough, but certainly a higher grade cabinets, cabinet faces. And then in some of the projects that we did previously, we brought washers and dryers into the units, and then charged rubs for that. But then they were able to have the laundry on site, and so I think that's very powerful because people wash their clothes. They got to sit down. It takes an hour or more, a couple hours to wash and dry your clothes, and just sitting down there waiting.
For sure.
And the laundry room is not so exciting. The challenge is there's additional maintenance. You could have people that don't take care of the washer, it overflows and it floods the unit below. I mean, you got things you got to be conscientious of too. And then one of the things we did at one of the properties, which we haven't implemented since, but we did it one time and it was such a good response that we're going to look into doing it on an annual basis, which is we brought a food truck and food truck came, and then we also invited the local community action officers, the police department for the area, some other community and people that are involved in the community safety events. They came and we had set up picnic tables and we had this event, and the people just loved it. They raved about it for months afterwards, how nice that was to do that, just to create the sense of community, get people out talking to each other, visiting. They didn't even know they were neighbors, and they're out there visiting one evening. And so we did that at a property in Tucson. It went really, really well. And so we're like, hey, we got to continue to do that. And so we're going to do that again. Once we get a project finished and fully occupied, we'll do a little celebratory food truck. It's just kind of popular right now, or has been. We haven't done anything like that in the last year due to COVID. We're really conscientious of what we do to not promote negativity towards super spreader events or things like that. So we're trying to kind of pause some of the community events for the last year anyway, for that reason. Like it or not, you don't want negative press, so we got to be careful.
Yeah, right. And it can be challenging. We're in a similar space, CB space. Most of our properties don't have any common amenities like a fitness center or meeting room or coffee bars, things like that. They're all individual entry type townhouse stuff. So it can be a little more challenging to do the community events. I like the idea of like bringing in the food truck, or even just setting up some picnic tables, because you're kind of limited with you can't exactly host a wine night in the foyer by the fireplace if you don't have one
Yeah.
that
Yep.
exists. So yeah, you kind of think outside the box a little bit with that. And I've heard of other people doing very simple things of, an occasional gift card to like, hey, dinner's on us tonight. Here's whatever, $10 or something. And
One of the things that one of the property managers did at one of the properties, which I thought was ingenious, is he had these rocks that he painted different colors, gold and green and silver, and he hid them throughout the property, and then the kids would go find them, and they would tell them that when you're out finding them, if you see any trash, pick up the trash. And the property became spotless because they would pick up all the trash as they're looking for these nuggets, and the grand prize was a plastic kettle full of gold coins, which were chocolate, right? And so they're just a little kettle, but that was the prize that they got. But they also got other things. They had videos there that you could borrow, they could use, check out like a library. They had all these G-rated videos that were there, and they'd come and check those out, and they could watch them on their DVD player at home. And then they had different things that he did with those rocks. But it's pretty funny when there's grand prizes and there's little prizes along the way. They got little gifts along the way. And the kids cleaned up the property. They kept it spotless. And they said, hey, when you're out there, if you see anything out of place, let me know. And they said, oh, he came in, there's a homeless guy behind this corner over here, and someone might want to go talk to him. So they went out there and told me he had to leave. And so just things like that were pretty ingenious for that property manager to do, to get the community involvement. The kids just loved it. In fact, he had to do it where he could only do it during in the afternoon, because there was kids skipping school to find those rocks on the property because they were so competitive.
Wow.
The unintended consequences.
Yeah, so he had to change the hours of that. But it was so he'd only put them out after school, and then he'd pick them up at the evening if they didn't find them. And it was just pretty fun. But the biggest thing is they got the kids to be outside, not holed up in their apartment, look at the electronics, and then they were working with each other, teamwork. Hey, if we do this, we'll split the prize. And they're like, oh, let's go. And so it just created this environment. It was ingenious, something I didn't think of, but that kind of environment was created because we have such a focus on the community that the property manager said, hey, I'm going to do something different. And I don't believe he would have done that had he not had somebody sharing, hey, we really want this to be a community. So with the property management company and us together helping serve that community, he just went above and beyond it. And so there's things like that. We like to attract those kind of people. Not that we're going to implement that exact game somewhere else, but we want people to, like you said, think outside the box. Because to me, there is no box. You just go out there and do. So that's exciting and fun to see.
Yeah, and I've seen like the little libraries and things like that. You mentioned the DVDs is just putting up a little birdhouse looking thing with some books in it that people can give and take things, no charge. It's just available for whoever walks by. There's a local guy that does that at his properties. I've always kind of wanted to steal that idea. Maybe I'll work on that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm like, oh, that's one of Brent's properties, because you drive by and there's a little library outside in the lawn. I'm like,
that's library and the bike rack. That's what he puts at both all of his properties.
Bike rack.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, it's Greg from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump onto realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the podcast.
Can you talk more, Bruce, about the permanent renter? Is that something that you guys have really just created, if you will? We know, like, Greg said earlier on, there's people that'll rent their entire life, but it seems like the last few years, we see the trend we're becoming more of a renter nation as opposed to an ownership nation. So is it more of this avatar that you guys are trying to create? Or make it an option for people that don't really, and because of everything you're putting into the customer experience, hey, we think we can have this person long-term, and here's why.
Yeah, I don't think it's been that granular, but it's been where the permanent resident exists, so let's take care of them. I believe that's more the approach that we used, not to create the permanent resident, but they're already there. but they go from property to property. And there's a few reasons why, probably 4 major reasons why people move from a property. Or, the 5th would be death, so we won't count that one. But four major ones is a job change. They're moving to a new area. They're leaving that area. One is they're moving into a house. The other one is the rents are going up and they can't afford it. And the other one is the property managers are not taking, or the property managers and owners are not taking care of their needs. And so they're unhappy. So if you can keep them happy and it's in their budget, competitive budget, and they're not moving to a new location and they're not buying a house, then those 2 we can take care of. But if it comes down to they can't afford it and they just can't afford it because the rents are going up with the market, that's an unfortunate consequence that there's people that do move that can't afford it and they have to move somewhere else. And then, but the most important one, if they move because the owners and the managers aren't taking care of them, to me, that's a fail on our part. So that's the most important one. The rest of those, we can't control those. We can't control what income they have. We can't control if they want to buy a house. If they want to buy a house, more power to them, enjoy yourself. If they take a new job, that's great. People are mobile these days. We got, people are nomadic. I mean, there's digital nomads all over now after the pandemic here. We're going to find that there's some people that never go back to an office. They're loving their new freedom. And then since we focus on mostly the workforce, those people are not digital nomads. They work in the retail service industry within the community. So they're less likely to be digital nomads, but who knows? We may attract some of those at even the lower income brackets. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. And, once you have proven to somebody that you care, that you're willing to provide good service and be proactive and care about them genuinely as humans, and they're in that 1-bedroom apartment with their partner and they have a child and now they need a 2-bed, they might just move to another property that you have because you've established that caring, strong relationship, and they would like to stick with you, although they might have just outgrown the particular unit they're in. I think it's just so forward thinking that you don't hear a lot of people talking about retention. Everybody talks about retention and renewals, but you're taking it a little bit further, which I find quite refreshing.
Well, I think anybody knows that a vacant unit pays no bills. We did the math, and no matter what, a vacant unit pays no bills, right? So turnover is your very, very most expensive part of operations is turnover, and so it would be very good for us to also look at ways to retain even on the dollars. Like if the rents are going up, but you have a long-term resident, and if you raise their rent, they're going to move, but they're a very good resident. You may want to consider other ways to retain them, because if you have a good resident and you're getting $50 more per month and they're going to move for that, it may be best just to keep them where they're at. And I know we have, you got certain restrictions. You can't treat people differently, but we still have to be able to run our business. So long-term residents, you could grandfather in under a lesser increase, perhaps, to keep those ones that have been there a long time. If they're a good resident, if it's $50 a month and they're gone, how many months does it take to recoup $800? At $50 takes 16 months. So is that really a good decision? So there's some of that goes into play as well. The downside is when you have a third-party property management company, you don't have as much of a touch with those residents. So you might lose some of that. And when you mention that, in the future, we may vertically integrate that again somehow, because that's something that is getting the legacy ownership. The property managers have to be on board with legacy as well.
Yeah, and let's talk about the legacy ownership. And then you use another term, the compound real estate returns. Our future is creating compound real estate returns for investors. Talk about that a little bit. What exactly do you mean by the compound real estate returns, as opposed to just regular IRR and cash on cash and everything else that we as sponsors talk about?
Yeah, the model that we've built is somebody will come into the property and they'll get the targeted return is typically around 14-15%. We've been as low as 10 and as high as, there actually been one that was under 10. Unfortunately, it was not a victory, but then we've had some that have been north of 21. So the range is pretty broad, but typically it's been in the mid-teens. And if in 3 years, what we're setting up is on the legacy, people want to get in and out of their property in 3 to 5 years, and then they want to redeploy their money somewhere else. And what I've done is in my mind, I've bracketed people into 3 different groups of investing. The active investor is person that takes the money, buys a rental property, manages it themselves. They're very, very active. On the other side, on the other extreme, is the passive investor, who's like the 401k, the IRAs. They put the money, they don't ever want it back. They just want to see their return, only be passive. And then in between is there's the active passive investors who want to get in and out in 3 to 5 years. Well, the ones that are far passive are kind of hard to change their mind. If they got a thing coming in and they're getting paid through their 401k, and getting them to switch to real estate is kind of a big hurdle. So we thought, hey, we'll still focus on attracting some of those. But that middle group that I call the passive active investors, they want to get in and out in 3 to 5 years. They want to see their money. I said, hey, what if we created a model where, and this was not original by me, the other people have done it. So I've copied what other people have done through the networking I've been working with. And so if we buy a property, 3 years down the road, we refinance it, and we get anywhere from 80 to 100% of their money back. And then in year 5, do a supplemental loan and get the rest of their money back. And so in 3 to 5 years, they get all their money back. Our goal is within 3 years, they get all their capital back, but they still remain as owners in the property because we've leveraged it. We don't buy them out. We return their capital, but they are still limited partners in our property. So they have zero money in, but they're still getting a return. Then they can reinvest that money, whether they reinvest it with us or reinvest it somewhere else. They're getting a compound because now they're getting return on 2 properties with the same dollar. They got that dollar back, but they still have that ownership. And if we could do it every 3 years in a 10-year period, they could have the same dollar invested in 3 different projects. And if you're getting, annualized return of 15%, that's 45% return on your money in a 10-year period. To me, that's pretty exciting. It's very patient. Yeah. You have to go through a cycle. We're going to see where the market's going to dip. We're going to have, things that happen to our economies that are going to affect that both positively and negatively. But our plan is over a 10-year period, they're in at least 2 to 3 properties or projects with the same dollar. And that's what I call the compound return, the compound effect on their money.
Okay. So that's, you just seem to be very long-term thinking, both with your residents and your properties and the people that you may be bringing on as investors. So, well,
there's two things I want to share on that, because I came about this in a very unusual way, in that most people go long-term because they have reasons why. My reasons are pretty weird, I think, but the first one is not weird. My son, Ben, took on acquisitions a few years ago, and he said, why do we sell everything? We sell everything at a peak when it's at its peak. Why do we sell? And I said, okay, well, let's build a plan to hold it. And so he's been really motivating me to look at things differently, because I am addicted to the purchase. I thought I was addicted to the flip, but I'm addicted to the purchase. That's really where I get my high on that. And I found out through this journey that I do not like dealing with buyers. I love dealing with sellers, do not like dealing with buyers. And what really is frustrating is you get a guy that's buying a property, and they go through their inspection period, and they say, you know what, we inspected the property and we saw this. There's 3 things they don't like, and they're going to cancel if you don't give them a credit, because those things have to get fixed right away. You sell the property, 2 years later, you go by, and those 3 things that they didn't like, they didn't fix. Anyway, the parking lot, the signage, the lighting, things that we were going to do anyway, but most of our projects we would sell before the project was 100% complete, because we get people, it's such a hot market, people were making offers. And we said, it's not really for sale yet. Oh, we'll make you an offer. And then they try to beat you up. So we have a new plan that we put in place. When we buy and when we sell, there's no retrades. So when we buy something, we don't retrade on it. It's take it or leave it. And then when people are buying from us, it's take it or leave it. And it's sometimes like, man, should we take that credit? The guy's buying a $5 million property and he wants a $25,000 credit. We're like, well, let's just call his bluff. Is he going to walk away for 25 grand? And they won't typically. But that's what I just said, you know what, if we never sell anything, I don't have to deal with that emotion of these buyers that, tend to beat you up. And then we won't beat our sellers up either. When we're buying, we'll just say, hey, we didn't like the property and here's why. And if they said, hey, listen, what would it take for you guys to buy the property? Well, we don't retrade. So you tell me a number that you really would like to get rid of it at. And if it fits our model, we'll buy it. Mm-hmm. And then, so we'll see, at that point, negotiate, but let the seller tell us a price, so that when we actually close, it doesn't feel like we beat them up. It's like, hey, they unloaded a problem. They feel good. we got a property at a number that works, we feel good. And I'm much more interested in that kind of negotiation than now we see people that make high offers and then going for a retrade. And I think that's bad for the environment, because they're doing it for the wrong reasons, not for the right reasons.
Yeah, they're trying to lock it up.
Yep.
Yep, lock it up. And then
So that's kind of where we went in. And then legacy to me is not legacy. Some people look at legacy as an image. To me, legacy is not the property. Like we have this beautiful, grandiose, like Trump style. That's not my legacy. My legacy is handing off a business model to the future generation that can provide income to the generation after them, which is my grandchildren. So I'm really excited about that kind of legacy handoff more than image. To me, it's not image. I drive a pickup. I live in a simple house. I don't have this big grandiose outlook on life. I feel life should be simple and enjoyed, and not one to be shared on Instagram. In fact, I canceled my social media except for LinkedIn because it's such a fake life that I didn't want to be part of that anymore. And not that there's not good things on social media. For me, it was stirring up the wrong emotions, and I'm a very passionate person. So I said, hey, if I don't stir up those emotions, I feel better about people, and it's true. So I canceled my Facebook and Instagram, and life is great.
Yeah, I mean, finding that balance, whatever works for you. I'm a little social media skeptic myself, and kind of do it because it's a function of our business. Some of it I enjoy, some of it just really bothers the hell out of me. I like your point of view on the retrading thing. I think it takes some of the mental gymnastics out of some of the decision making, that you're like, hey, this is how we're going to do it, and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, sometimes it's hard to as individuals, to hold to that integrity of do what you're saying you're going to do, or say what you're going to do, and then do what you said you would do. That's not always easy. Sometimes we say what we're going to do, and then our reality distorts, and we get into a position we say, well, that's really not what I meant, and we try to even within ourselves try to justify our decisions to change our mind on things. But so that's one of the things I've worked on, that we say something and then you do what you said you're going to do. And it's not always easy. I mean, you think people say, oh, I do that all the time. No, we don't. As humans, we find ways to not do those things sometimes. And that's a natural thing for humans to redefine what they meant previously. And it's much easier just to do it. And in some ways, and much more difficult than others.
Yeah. And I like the supplemental idea, or just staying in a property, and regardless of your notes length. Some people say, well, you have interest rate risk with a supplemental. Well, if you sell it and you buy something else, you're also going to have the interest rate risk with any new acquisition that you're going to have. Everybody is going to have the same interest rate risk in the future, regardless if you're maintaining your own property or buying a new one. So at least with the supplemental strategy, you already know everything about this property. You know it well, you know what it's capable of, you know it intimately, instead of selling and then going to buy something. You have to recreate a new business on a new property that you have no prior knowledge of. So
Yes.
I like that idea of why get rid of this great performing asset because somebody offers us a good price. That price is basically reflective of the market anyway. Let's just pull the equity out of it and hold it, and then you can have the sleep well at night knowing that you have a good performing property that you're comfortable with, and then you also have some capital to deploy to grow. So
yeah, that's and I get that the challenges there too. People talk about over leverage, like when the market goes soft, you want to be sure you're able to weather that, and you don't want to be in a dip where the rents are down, vacancy is up, and the interest rate's up. You could run into a problem where you don't have the debt coverage ratio, so you better have reserves in place to buy down your note. And that's one of the things that we're going to build as well, that we have those reserves in place. So we have thought of that. And one of the investors that I've worked with, or not worked with, I've networked with out of Florida, he said he never does more than 65% leverage. And he said people that buy in higher leverage can run into challenges. And so I thought, well, that's difficult to buy at that because the IRR then is low. So we're trying to figure out where's that balance. So the goal is to push the values as much as we can through our asset management and create that higher value based on increased rents and increased RUBS and a more efficient run asset to get that higher NOI, to create more safety that way. So that's where we like to buy the underperforming ones, and you might buy it at a 4 cap today, but after a year you're at a 5.5, maybe after 3 years you're at a 7 or 6. I mean, if you really can do well, you can really run that up, push those numbers up. Then you can be safe in your supplemental loan, so you don't over
Yeah, it can be mitigated.
Yeah, so it's something we who knows, we're putting this model out there, but you and I both know that the day the model is done, it's already broken, because things change. When you get into a property, you have a resident that trashed a unit, and now you have a $4,000 turn instead of an $800 turn, and now you do that times 10 or whatever. Things change. It's never exact, but through experience, we're buying our 18th property, which is that motel conversion, and so we've been through the cycles on 17 properties. And we've seen what can be done to push the values and to create stability in the property.
Yeah, let's talk about the motel conversion. We touched on it briefly before we started recording. And I had mentioned it sounds like it's gained popularity for whatever reason. I'm just curious as to what you saw as the opportunity there. Are there hotels that are not doing well, so there's assets available that are easier to convert than to go ground up? I'll let you kind of answer that, because you're the one actually doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So before I get to that, how did this come about? We had a friend of ours said, hey, we had heard about motel conversions. And so we had conversations, and there's a friend of ours who's a police officer, City of Phoenix. He also owns rental properties as his side hustle. And he told my son, Ben, hey, there's this apartment there's a motel you guys need to buy. He says, it is a crime-ridden. He goes, you guys got to do something different. That thing needs to be shut down. So we tracked down the owner. Took us some weeks to get a hold of the owner, and he already had it under contract with somebody else. So it's sold. And I don't remember if they're doing a conversion or not there, but we just thought, hey, that's a good idea. Well, through that, we got introduced to some brokers that all they do is motel sales, motel sales. And this last year, I've been watching the vacancies go up, and the people, Phoenix hasn't been hit super hard like other areas, but I just see these horrific numbers where people are 10% occupied, trying to scramble to keep their motel open, because they know that in a year or two, another season, it's going to pick up again. And so we just pondered that and went to talk to these brokers, and they've introduced us to a couple of deals, one in Phoenix, one in Tucson, and one in Sierra Vista. We went down and looked at the one in Sierra Vista and immediately fell in love with it. And the reason is it's currently a Quality Inn, so it's a decent flag on it. It's part of Choice Hotels branding, and the owner is making enough money to pay the operations or the mortgage, but not both. So he's putting money into it, and he's deep enough pocketed that he can do it. But he says, he really should sell. Well, Sierra Vista has been hit really hard with hospitality, and he's running at 30% occupied right now, and that's just difficult on a 100 unit to pay all the bills. And so then when we negotiated the offer, we're at before we negotiated with that, we looked at Sierra Vista. We talked to property managers, talked to people in the area, found out what is the demand there, and they said that we need units under $1,000 a month. There's a big demand for them. Right now they're living in some extended stay motels. They're living in communities 20-30 minutes away, but it's a growing area of retirees, as well as there's a military base there, Fort Huachuca. Well, we were able to negotiate this property at $38.50 per square foot. And then if we do the conversion, it's 100 units now. We convert it down to, we'll get 65 units, 31 studios, 31 one bedrooms, and 3 2 bedrooms based on the layout. Well, with that, we're into it for about $70, $75 a square foot, which is about half of replacement cost. Now we can deliver units to the market under $1,000 a month, and the residents will have new properties, solid surface countertop, shaker cabinets, stainless appliances. It'll look as a B plus when we're done, but it's gonna really cater to the B minus C plus resident. So we're gonna do a little bit above and beyond to see if we can retain some of the people because of the upgrades that we're going to do. We got to add them anyway. Well, it's such a little amount that we're adding to the property to get a nicer product, and it still pencils really, really well. So that's where when we seen we could get in there for below half a replacement cost and supply units 700 to 950 per unit, and they're new units to the market, because you couldn't build for that, and we cannot. There's not enough demand for the 2,000 plus renter to create A properties. So that was a way for us to enter the market at low cost. And so we're really super excited about that. We really wanted to do, if we could have, 100 studios, but the market can't absorb 100 studios. 30 is probably fine, but 100 would be too saturated, especially at one location. So that's why we're doing the conversion to 1 bedrooms.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that there would be some kind of unit exposure or limitation that would the market be able to absorb what I thought were probably going to be basically studios. So you're knocking down some walls and doing some combining to broaden the unit mix out.
Well, that's what's really neat. The property, every other wall is block. And so interior walls, every other wall interior then is drywall, and that's the wet wall. So they have the bathrooms are against each other. What we're doing is we're going to cut a hole, put a doorway in there, and then there'll be the bathroom and a bedroom on one unit, and then the other unit will be the kitchen and the living area.
Okay.
So the wet wall, the kitchen will back up to the bathroom, so you'll be able to share the wet wall. And so all we have to do is cut a hole. We don't have to bust down any walls. We just cut a hole, and that goes into the bedroom and the bathroom, because the bathroom is already there. We'll turn that one unit into a bedroom. The other unit will be a living room. So the 2 units side by side will be just a doorway cut in between them.
Yeah, and I imagine, being being a motel, there probably is some common space on the lobby floor for game room type amenities or something. A lot of times they often have a little conference room or something like that. Yeah. So you have a built-in infrastructure or the permanent resident, let's do some events type thing.
It has a pool. It has a pool there, which is really nice. It's a big pool. It's got a hot tub. Barbecue grills are already there, or places for them that are there. And then we also have the lobby area will turn into a computer center. Put some computers with internet, and they could do things there too if they don't have access in their own units. We found that in another property we have a internet cafe, and the people use it quite a bit. So not a lot, but there's always somebody in there when we go in there, or I should say often, not always, but often. And so one thing that people should know, when you're doing a motel to an apartment conversion, there's going to be different codes that are required. Like this property here, we're going into a permanent. We had to make sure that the firewall between units is up to standard, up to code for permanent, for motels, or for an apartment. And so now we had to make sure that when there's drywall between units, if it's blocked, that's fine. But the drywall between units, we got to make sure that that's the right thickness. We also have to make sure the electrical is enough. We're putting a lot of money into running new electrical throughout because we're adding more draw to that with the kitchens. Are going to bring in, the stoves and the ovens and the refrigerators. I can bring in more power. Not enough power in the unit to supply that. And the other thing they're requiring is sprinkler systems throughout, fire sprinkler systems. So we got that in the budget as well, and that's going to be all new sprinkler systems throughout. And the people met. And what we did was pretty fun. Was I called the building manager for the city of Sierra Vista, and he says, "Well, I said, can you just meet us at the property, walk us through what needs to get done?" He said, "Sure, and I'll bring the fire marshal." And so they came. The two guys, that's the beauty behind a small town. They came and they said, "Okay, here's what it needs to look like when you're done." They didn't tell us what to do or how to do it, because it has to be engineered. But here's what it needs to be when it's complete. And they walked us through, okay, this wall and this wall need to be looked at. Okay, that's block. It's concrete floor, concrete mid-floor, and concrete ceiling. Rooftop is concrete. And then the block walls to concrete. Okay, those are good. These walls here, you got to do something different on. Make sure you got to have them tested. The sprinkler system needs to come in. It needs to do this and do that. Kind of had an idea. And I said, well, that was really, really nice that they came out and toured the property, spent an hour and a half with us walking the property and giving us good insight. And my ambition is always find out what the city wants and then deliver that. And you're going to have a very easy time working with them. If you think you have a better plan and you're going to show the city, hey, my plan's better. If you deviate from your plan, you're going to get red tagged, and they don't care about your plan. They just care about you meeting their city code. And so that's what we found out with Glendale and Phoenix on our projects we did, is we asked, what do you want? Then people said, man, you guys got your project just run through permitting and your projects went up fast. It's like, because we asked them what they wanted and then we delivered it. Don't try to teach them what's better or different, because even if your idea is better, they're bureaucrats. They're not going to listen to you. They have a checkbox.
That's a great
well,
point.
and you're coming in, you're serving, you're providing a need that the community needs. You're like, we need, the market is dictating, we need more housing under whatever you said, a grand or something. You're like, hey, city, we're going to provide it. Help us do this. So you're
Yes.
working on a common goal, and cities love it when you're proactive. That's our experience. And it's so much easier to go on the front side and figure it out than to try and undo stuff that you've already done. So yeah,
many operators detest the people that we embrace, and that's the city inspectors. So people say, oh, they're jerks, they do this. It's like, hey, if you do what they ask you to do, what's the problem? Well, some people say, well, they changed. They said to do this, and I did it, and then they said it wasn't right. I said, it's rarely that people do that. It's they're checkbox people, and if you try to shortcut it, and they find out, they're going to be sticklers with you. If you say, hey, what do you need? You need to deliver that. It's such an easy process. I should say, easier process. It's never easy.
Right.
There's still headaches, and there's still bureaucracy, and it's hard to get entrepreneurs and bureaucrats to work together. But that's one way to do it, is you work on the human side and step away from the let's do it the way that we think is best, and just provide what the city needs, as long as it fits into your overall plan. Now, if they have something that they want you to do that's cost prohibitive, then you can't do it. Like if these sprinklers, they're going to be a couple $100,000 to redo the whole thing, and it has to be a dedicated water supply line. It can't go through your water meter, because what if you didn't pay your water bill and they shut the water off? I guess, I don't know why, but it has to be dedicated water line only for that, probably for pressure. So anyway, dedicated water line. Well, if that would have been too costly and it broke our model, we'd say it's just not going to work, and we wouldn't have pursued the property. It comes down to math, right?
Right, exactly. And you're finding out these needs before you've inked the deal. Yes. So if you can price it all in and it still works, okay, it still works.
We've had good guidance from the brokers. The brokers say these are things you need to look for. Fire and electric are the two areas that you have to find out is the property sufficient, because if it's not, those are high costs. Fire safety and electric. That's it.
I imagine there's probably a little more upfront costs in the due diligence process, maybe for bringing in an engineer and an architect or something to figure some of that stuff out. But it is what it is. But
some thousands of dollars. We did spend money on this, where we typically have waited till we've owned the property, but we did it up front to make sure. I'd rather spend a few grand and find out we can't do it than to not spend it.
Than to find out you're operating a hotel when you thought you were going to be having an apartment complex.
Yeah. But as you can see, we're really excited about that, because we're serving the community, we're serving the investors by providing a good return, and we're serving the residents. I mean, it's all around. We're super excited to get started. The other thing we did is the property is Quality Inn. Of course, we have to rebrand it. We can't leave it flagged as Quality Inn, so that gets canceled. And so that we thought, what do we name that? And we're naming it Thunder Mountain. And so somebody said, oh, that's interesting. Where'd you come up with that? Well, Huachuca Army Base is there. It's a Fort Huachuca is there, and it's spelled Huachuca, but it's pronounced Huachuca. And so I did some research. I Googled Huachuca. What does Huachuca mean? And it's Native American. It means Thunder Mountain. And you think about it, back in the day when people didn't have GPS, they would meet there's a mountain, and the weather there is at a higher elevation. The weather's a lot different than Phoenix. My guess is that there was a lot of storms in the area certain times of the year, and they named it Thunder Mountain. And so that's why we named it Thunder Mountain, to kind of pay homage to the name Huachuca, which is very prevalent in that area.
Oh, right on.
That's really cool. What's your projected timeline on it, Bruce?
9 months is to get stabilized.
Wow.
Wow, that's great.
Yes. So, well, the infrastructure is there. The permitting is going to be the slowest part in the beginning. And they told us that if you deliver what we want, we can turn this in and out within, he said, 30, no more than 60 days. And they gave us some timelines of what we can get there. We've been pinging them quite a bit about how we can streamline the process. And he said, hey, the more you do up front with engineering and architect, the easier it'll be for you. So we've been doing that right now. We're going to hit the ground running. The other thing that's pretty exciting is we're going to run it as a month to month. In Arizona, you can do month to month without apartment requirements, and you can fall into the motel, but there's demand for month to month. So we'll get people in their month to month fully furnished units in some of the units during the construction to alleviate some of the cash flow challenges, because there's what we call the valley of death, where you're spending money and not making any in the beginning with debt and other costs. So we'll alleviate some of that by having maybe 20 to 30 units rented month to month.
Right on. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm glad you touched on it. I know there's a lot going on with those kind of things. So I think you hit some of the big ones for people that might have ears perked up with that potential model. Let's switch gears. Maybe do a little bit of mindset stuff. I see you're doing a 52-week journey to 52 books in 52 weeks. I think you were at 19 books for 17 weeks. What's the update now? Are you behind?
Yeah, no. So I've yeah, the reason I did that, I had read where somebody, I don't remember who it was. If it was Warren Buffett's or Bill Gates, or I don't even know if it's a true story, but somebody said, hey, to get ahead, you need to read a book a week. That's what so-and-so does. And I said, oh, book a week. I wonder if I could do that. And so last November, I said, I'm going to start reading a book a week. And so I started with Dr. Seuss. No, I'm just kidding. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. No, I started, so I started reading. I've been an avid reader, and I was trying to get one a month in. I said, I'm going to see if I can do one a week. And some books are easy read and some aren't. Some take a little longer than a week and some are shorter. So yeah, it's been mostly, it's all business and self-development books. There's the books that I've liked are Relentless by Tim S. Grover, is a really good one. Life is Magic by John Dornbos. He was a long snapper for the Philadelphia Eagles and became a magician, entertainer. So he's been on some national, I'm not a TV watcher, but I think he's been on AGT, America's Got Talent, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah, one of those things.
And then I think he's friends with Ellen DeGeneres. I know he's had some legs with that. I've seen something on YouTube with that too. But anyway, so that was a cool book just because his story is amazing. If anybody wants to know about that, you should find out, because I'm not going to give it away, but it's amazing what he's come from and who he's become, and his attitude is just contagious. When I watch some videos on him, it's like it's a lovable guy that had a very, very rough childhood, brutal. And then, so books like that are exciting. Then I also read Eliyahu Goldratt wrote the book, The Goal, and it made me pause, like, what is my goal? And in the book, they said, your goal is to make money. It's that simple. Now, how do we get there? And he's the one that introduced the theory of constraints, where you have planned bottlenecks so you don't overload inventory, because inventory, for many years, inventory in a business has been listed as an asset. He said it's a liability until it's sold, then it's an asset. So if you have a warehouse full of widgets, it does you no good. And people list that, hey, I have all these assets over here. Well, they're not assets if they're not producing revenue for you. They're a liability. Like even Kiyosaki says, if it's not producing income and it's a cost, it's a liability, period. It's just, even your own house, people see it as an asset. He says, no, it's a liability. And I like that mindset. So that Goldratt really expounds on that with his three of the books I've read for him. But yeah, the one I'm reading now is Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And that one's a really fascinating journey. It uncovers the good, the bad, and the ugly about Steve Jobs, who he was. And so I've learned some things that you hear about, and he says in his own words, at least, Walter was given the go ahead to create the biography for Steve. So I'm guessing it's fairly accurate. But I don't know if I can read it. And you said, are you getting behind? I don't know that I can finish this one in a week. It's 600 pages. I think I'm on page 350 or 400. I don't know exactly, but it's tough to read that one in a week.
Well, you can pick up like The Giving Tree or another short read and bring the average back into.
Yeah, pick up a Louis L'Amour and read it in an afternoon.
Yeah, there you go. My buddy reads those. I'm like, haven't you read them all if you've read one? And I shouldn't say that because I've never read one. But and I was just curious. That's part of it, because he reads it just for pleasure. And so I was wondering if you're just an avid reader, and that was like how you were going to guard some time for yourself, just to indulge yourself in something that you love by making it a little personal challenge. And clearly you're going to learn a lot too. So, and that was one of the other things. I thought you were going to go down that road where if you read a book a week or something, within a couple of years, you get an equivalent of a bachelor's of education if you drop all of those books into a similar content. So
what I'm finding is fascinating is there's certain things that come out very consistently in all of those, and certain messages, golden nuggets that come out that that treat people right. Your people are the people in your business are gold. I mean, you take care of them. And if they don't fit the culture mismatch, if they're not a cultural fit, get rid of them. You know, No Rules by Reed Hastings of Netflix. You know, I've never subscribed to Netflix. I've never watched Netflix, but their model for their business and their employees is amazing. So we instituted a unlimited vacation policy for the employees, and people say, well, that's great. I'm gonna take the whole year off. I said, well, you're not getting any work done. So there's no accountability. You still have to be accountable for your work. You have work you have to get done, and they're teasing. So we're not going to measure vacation. If people take 5 weeks a year and they get all their work done, they'll be compensated accordingly. I mean, that's just how we can do that. So based on our staff, we've implemented that. So we have no set hours. You know, some people come in at 7 and some come in at 9 and some leave at 4 and some leave at 6. And just as long as the core work gets done, and then we set meetings, and follow a schedule. That's the other thing I found in these books is the people that are successful have regimented schedules. And I've always been an early riser. So this morning I was up at 5 and 5:15, I was sitting on the chair and I read for 90 minutes before I, take a shower, eat breakfast, and come in and was on the call with you guys at 7:30 Phoenix time. So to me, that's following a schedule is very powerful. It hasn't been easy for me because I'm a free thinker. I like to just shoot from the hip. But the more structure I get, all of a sudden, the more freedom I have. And that was weird. I said, well, how can more structure create more
It's
freedom?
counterintuitive. Yeah.
It is.
Like I've heard people, it's like scheduling time to be with your spouse. And they're like, that seems like I'm degrading that somehow. Whereas the flip side of that is no, you're giving it enough value to make sure nothing interferes with it. So it's kind of weird to think that you have to schedule time to have personal time, but you're also
Yeah, that's where I try to have everything
value
from
needs. Yeah.
I book in my days 5:30 to 5:30, which is 5:30 in the morning, 5:30 at night. That's my time. But of course, there's flexibility. My daughter rides horses. I might have to go pick her up and bring her to horse or do other things that are personal within the day. I have to be flexible. But typically at 5:30, I shut off my work phone, shut the computer, no more work. And sometimes I'll break out in the evening and do some mind mapping in that. But I'm trying to do all of that in the morning when my mind is the most open and most, it feels to be the most energized. And then the evening is, family time. And then I do read in the evening before I go to bed at night, usually wind me down as well. So, I'll get a couple of, some days, 2 hours or 2.5 hours of reading in a day, but you start early and end late, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that structure ending at 5:30 was difficult for me because people reach out in the evening, they want to talk, they send emails. And I found out that I wouldn't sleep as well because you're reading email right before you go to bed. That's a mistake. Wait till morning.
Yep.
I'll check my emails the first time, usually after 9 in the morning is where I used to get up in the morning. First thing to do is check my email. Well, all of a sudden that dictates your thought process for the next hour when you should be creating the most value for your business, which isn't responding to emails. That's necessary, but start doing it at a certain time. So I do it at 9, 1, and 4 is typically when I check my emails. That's it. Boom, boom, boom. And then anything in between, I'll get a text now. My people will text me or send me a Slack message. Check your email if it's in between those slots, because they know it's not like a text message for me. So if there's something that urgent, they'll ping me on it. If I got to sign a
That's
document
cool.
or
I mean,
something.
you're transparent with the people that are closest to you that if you need to know something, you need to know something and please alert me. But otherwise they know you'll get to it at 1.
Yep.
And that's awesome. I really like that.
Intentionality and expectations. I love it.
Yeah.
So that comes across in a lot of the books I'm reading is you see what is there's a golden, that seems like the golden thread is a structure.
Time block.
To have no rules, but yet structure. It seems strange. How can that be? So I do time block. I do 90-minute segments typically, 60 minutes of solid focus on something, and then 15 minutes of catch up tasks. And then I'll do it for a while there. I got to get back to it. I'd go do a 5-minute walk. Just leave my stuff.
I was just thinking that,
open.
it happens with me all the time. Like I'll just kind of hit a wall and I'll open LinkedIn or something. I'm like, now I'm just procrastinating. I know I need to do something, but I'm like checking the weather. I'm like, I can look out the window and see what the weather is.
Yeah, that's nice outside.
Kim and I will just be like, let's just go for a walk. Let's take the dog for a walk, get some fresh air, recharge. And then 'cause you should read Deep Work. Maybe put that on your list. That's a really good one about, time efficiency. His chapter on email alone is
who wrote that? That's okay. I'll look it up. Deep Work.
Deep Work. Yeah.
I do that too. It's an author. There's authors I know well, and so who's the author? I'm like,
I'll
don't ask
ping
me.
you on it. Yeah, I'll drop it on.
I'll
my
look it up, but
Twitter.
that's good.
Yeah, but
No,
yeah,
I love. I've got 40 books. I got enough books for the rest of the year, I think, in here. But I'm picking and choosing, and what's really strange is when I pick something like, okay, this week I'm gonna read this book, and all of a sudden things start coming. It's like, well, how could that have happened? You know, that there's things that are hitting me. Like I'm reading Steve Jobs and I'm listening to Darren Hardy's thing this morning. It's all about the Steve Jobs story when he left Apple and came back and how you need to sometimes recreate yourself. I'm like, whoa, that was like what he was talking about. I just read that same, just
yeah, it seems
20
like
minutes
life is an algorithm sometimes. It's weird that
so the law of attraction, if people
Yeah.
don't believe in it, then they don't read
Mhm.
enough. Because if you read, things just start happening around you that are just, you can't explain, just blow you away week after week
Mhm.
after week.
Yeah. So
Everything's kind of intertwined.
well, Bruce, yeah, I think that's a good spot to end. We want to be conscious of your time. Really great talking to you. I appreciate learning your journey to, this was kind of, this series is based around that 500 unit thing, but it's not all about that numbers. Like in that journey, you got to a space and you realized that you had to retract from it a little bit and reorganize. How do you want it to move forward? And I love what you're doing with uh, the permanent renter, the togetherness business. I really love that. The apartment thing blew me away. I'm like, yeah, it has a part right in the name. That's lame.
Yeah,
So
to create
yeah,
unity. So
I really.
and our goal is, we have a goal of 1,000 units. So in a short time. So we're gonna see if we can get to that through various partnerships and strategies. So I'd like to keep in touch on the journey, kind of let you know how we progress.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love accountability. If I share something and then people say, how are you doing on that? Well, that was too big of a number. No, I want people to poke me and say, hey, how's it going? Are you on track for your 1,000 units?
Yeah.
And currently we're not quite, but hey, we'll pick it up again. You know, if we buy one 200 unit building, all of a sudden, boom, you're on the map, you know?
Yeah.
What I love, this will be my last comment and we can wrap up if you guys want to, but what I love about everything you're doing and your company stands for is there's a human element or emotion attached to everything you're doing. Even the name of your company, and I read the background behind that, I was like, wow, that is really cool. You know, it really means something. So I just appreciate that. I'm big on attraction, the energy from other people and mindset. So all that stuff you said near the end of us talking is really resonated with me, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we didn't even mention that Bakerson. You know, I grew up in the bakery business, and so I tell people I'm an SOB. I'm a son of a baker. So, and I grew up in the bakery business, Woulett Bakery in Minneapolis, and my dad was the owner. And when we were trying to decide of a name, my business partner at the time, Jack Martin, his dad and my dad worked for my grandpa. So we ended up reuniting. We grew up in Minneapolis. Jack's family moved to Seattle. Jack moved to Phoenix. I moved to Phoenix. We reconnected. And we said, hey, what about a name? And I said, oh, Bakerson. And he said, that really ticks me off. I said, why is that? He said, I wish I would have thought of it.
That's funny.
So we had fun little rivalry between us. And we're still, we parted ways 65 years ago. We're still really good friends in life. So, but yeah, the Bakerson is, and then my dad was not an emotional guy, except for the end of his life. He was stricken with cancer. He was given 6 months to live, and he lived 6 years with cancer, up and down, a lot of emotion. When I named my business, he really liked it. He called me Boo. He said, I really like that, Boo. That's awesome. And he got a little tear in his eye, and he was happy that I named it Bakerson. So it's and we're gonna carry on the name. And my dad's name, Benjamin Bruce. My name is Bruce Benjamin. My son's name is Benjamin Bruce.
Wow.
So he works for me, and he says that somebody asked about the name Bakerson. He says, my grandpa was a baker. I'm keeping that name. So, once he takes over the business,
Yeah, that legacy kind of mindset seems to be a bit of your core, just based on what you just shared there, in addition to what you do with your business. So yeah, that's awesome. So
yeah, we'd love to keep in touch, Bruce, for partnership opportunities. Accountability goes both ways. We'd love that. So appreciate you bringing that up as well.
Well, the best ideas I get are from other people that I've been able to morph into my own, change it, take it, and change it. And so that's where I share with people. And then I have ideas that you guys might say, man, that's really cool. We want to implement that. it's, I'm really a free thinker. I like to share information. It's a big sandbox. I don't think there's a lot of secrets in this business. So if you guys have questions, let's certainly keep in touch. I love that side of it, where we can pick each other's brains.
I'm amazed that you're able to do what you've done with your community tenant model, if you will, even though we don't like that word, using third-party management, because we have wanted to bring management in-house, and we have not done it yet, to do those things better. So we may pick your brain one day, just have a call on, hey, give us some of these. Everything you're doing with third party ultimately leads to in-house, right? You're just doing it on your own. So Greg's got a great relationship with Brian Chavez, and they do it. And so we would love to just do the same with you and say, okay, we're ready to push the button.
Yeah. So.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We want to, again, thank Bruce for his time. If you found something from this episode you think somebody would benefit from, we certainly appreciate you sharing it with them directly. And as always, a review and a comment is welcome. For Darren, we'll see you in a couple hours here on a property tour. And Bruce, again, we appreciate your time. We will see you all on the next episode.